And hello, YouTube, and welcome to Rich Sports Talk. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We are joined by Craig Swicki from Wicks Picks, and we'll have a lot of fun picks for you later in this episode. We are talking more New York Giants and some big news out today about the pup list with the Giants. We've all talked about the quarterback at nauseum, but I want to get another Giant fan's opinion today. And for those of you joining us live, make sure you post in the comments section. And Craig, thanks so much for joining us here today. What are your initial thoughts after the first two preseason games? Anything really stood out to you about this team so far?
I think the one thing as a Giant fan that we noticed a lot was Jones has a lot of time in the pocket to throw, which is excellent. It's very refreshing from last couple seasons because their O-line absolutely was horrible. And I think going forward, building off of these preseason games, bearing any injuries, let's hope this last one, nobody gets injured. They should wrap everyone in bubble wrap. But honestly, I think that going forward in general, they just need to keep building off game to game. The little mistakes, stupid drops by the wide receivers. We can't be having that anymore this year. We got rid of Evan Ingram last year. So mainly, I think the wide receivers need to have better ball security and stop thinking about going upfield. Just catch the ball first. That's the number one priority. When it comes to defense, I think the D-backs, I was happy with them last year, for how young of a core that secondary was. And I think with the upgrades of Thibodeau and just like getting Azeez Ojulari back as well, I think the D-line is going to surprise a lot of people this year. And I said it last year, but it kind of came back to bite me in the butt. But I think the Giants are going to be a surprising team this year. Saquon, he's going to be a real surprise this year. Everyone's counting him out. And the more people count him out, I think he's going to prove everyone wrong. He's in a contract year. And as you know, in sports, when players are in contract years, you know how that ends up.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've talked about Saquon, I think, ad nauseum, but one of the big questions, I think, for any team in the NFL is the quarterback. And as a Giant fans, what are your expectations right now for Daniel Jones? Do you think what kind of season do you expect out of him? Do you feel that this is just going to be a reasonable year? Are you just looking for him to be a game manager, or do you actually think he does take a legit step forward?
I think he takes that next step forward, and it all stems down to Brian Daboll as the head coach and seeing what he did with Josh Allen in Buffalo. And do I think Jones is going to lead us to the Super Bowl this year? No. Let's be realistic. I don't think so. But do I see us making strides in the right direction, like the turnovers, the ball security with Jones, even the injuries too? I think the O-line plays a big part into that. And I think having a good O-line around him, he's not going to have to scramble as much out of the pocket unless it's a design run play for him. And I think just the O-line in general, it's going to stem down to that. And it's going to also stem down to Brian Daboll and how he works with Jones week to week, game planning, going over film with him, just the one-on-one interaction.
And I do think that it is, and guys, for those of you just joining us in the live stream, make sure to put your questions in the chat. We will get to them throughout the video. But it does feel kind of, and you can tell me where you kind of lie in the fan base right now, is I've just watching this fan base on social media and how they've reacted. I feel like there's three camps for Giant fans. I think that there's a big group that have already moved on from Daniel Jones. This is just basically a holdover. I do think there's a group that still believes in Daniel Jones. I think that is kind of in the minimum. And then I think you have people on the fence where they're cautiously optimistic, saying, hey, I hope Daniel Jones is the guy, but they're thinking to themselves, don't really think he's the guy. Where do you fall in that camp?
I'd say I'm kind of on the fence a little bit, you got to take a lot into consideration. You go through, what do you go through? He's on his third head coach, all these playbooks he needs to go over and everything like that. It's a lot for a young kid. He's not a seasoned veteran like, let's say, a Kirk Cousins, where he's been in the league a while. So, I mean, that takes a lot into consideration too, when I think about how I feel about him. But when it comes to ball security, making dumb mistakes, throwing it at literally the other defender, stuff like that, it's just like, dude, what are you doing out there? Like, what do you do all week in practice? So, I mean, that's where I kind of am on him. If he gets rid of the stupid mistakes and we lose games because of, say, Saquon fumbles or Kenny Galladay fumbles and stuff like that, stuff that Jones can't control, basically I'm fine then with Jones. I want him to stop making stupid mistakes out there. And I think I bet I'm speaking for a lot of Giants fans. That's the most frustrating thing with him, is the stupid mistakes. So if he cuts down on the stupid mistakes, say we win 8 games this year, I see that as kind of a win in progress when it comes to Daniel Jones.
But it just kind of feels like even if he's a game manager, that this team is still going to move off from him. Like, even if he goes out there and is average, like, I've used this example for the Giants, which is, in this league, I feel like you either need a skill position set to elevate the quarterback, or you need a quarterback to elevate the skill positions. And for the Giants, I think both positions are kind of looking at the other, where I think that they have some good playmakers, but I don't think that they have the playmakers that are dominant enough where they can elevate Daniel Jones. On the opposite side, I don't think that there's enough great playmakers and offensive line help around to elevate Daniel Jones. So it feels like they're just kind of stuck in neutral almost a little bit for this team. But it is kind of funny, though, like, we've seen the playmakers around Daniel Jones. I mean, we've talked about Saquon Barkley, and to be honest with you, I'm a bit on the fence about Saquon. Like, even when he was right, it just felt to me like he was a big home run hitter, but he wasn't a super consistent running back. Like, what do you think will be different about this year, where when we look at the end of the season, we're like, okay, Saquon has established himself again as one of the top backs in this league? Because it feels like every year, like, and you're a big fantasy guy, it feels like every year you draft Saquon the top 3 of the draft, and at the end of the season, it just feels like a massive disappointment. But you think that this is going to be that turnaround year. Why?
I think it is going to be a turnaround year for him, because if you look at his game film last year, he would get the ball and he'd give it like a stuttered step every single time. Like, hey, should I go east-west or should I go north-south? Where this year he gets the ball and bang, he just hits the hole every time. I don't know if it's him coming back from the knee injury last year, like kind of second guessing himself. Like, can I do this? Can I not do this? Where this year he has more confidence going into it. But I've just noticed from seeing camp film of him, and just like from that first game against the Patriots, he was just like pounding the hole every single time, and fighting for the extra yards like he was in his rookie season. And I mean, he looks like his old self out there on the field, which is really refreshing as a fan, and I just think he mentally and physically, he's just ready to play this year, where last year was kind of like, come back from the injury, let's see how this pans out type of thing, where he's had a full year to recover now, and he's just like ready to get out there.
And I do think that that is very important for this team. And I mean, before we get to the defense, the skill position players, like, the Giants have a funny skill position. Like, when I look at the wide receivers, where they obviously have a lot of talent on this wide receiver core. I think Wan'Dale Robinson has proven that he's looked pretty good in camp. It seems like Kadarius Toney is right. He's actually got shoes that fit this year. I mean, but there are concerns about Kenny Galladay, the injuries, about how he's kind of going lackadaisical through practice. When you look at this receiving core, how important is it for them to really take strides forward, and for Toney and Robinson specifically to come out of the gate fast, because it feels like if they can get on a roll early, that could be instrumental, not only for Daniel Jones's development, but for Saquon's as well.
Yeah, I mean, the more people healthy, the more weapons on the field, the defense can only have so many eyes out there, like, hey, we got to watch Saquon, we got to watch Galladay, we got to watch KT out there. So, I mean, the more guys out there, the more playmakers you got, the better chance of winning you have. And I think I'll start with Galladay. I wouldn't say he's lackadaisical, but like he hasn't made those impacts yet. He hasn't made the impacts that Plax had when the Giants got him from the Steelers. He really just hasn't ignited the offense at all. I mean, he's not really outspoken like OBJ was. He kind of keeps to himself and stuff like that. But I mean, he's just the type of guy where it's like, okay, I'm sitting here every week waiting for something to happen. Nothing's happening. And that kind of leads into Robinson and KT, where I think both of them are more of like the light to this offense, to light the gas to this offense. And I see both of them making a huge impact, bearing any injuries. I'm hoping Tony could stay healthy this year. That would be super helpful to the offense, because you could put him in motion. You could throw him in the backfield along with Saquon, on shotgun formations. You could do so much with him. He's a very versatile player. I think Robinson is going to be a very nice piece for this team. And you also have Shepard, too. He's come back from a very serious injury, the Achilles injury. So you really don't know what you're going to get from him. But whatever you could get, you should take. I see Tony being either like a slot receiver this year. Even I'd honestly make him a wide receiver too. Throw him on the outside with Galladay, and throw him on some streak routes or some deep posts over the middle, because with his speed, man, and his yards after carry, it's just unbelievable. But overall, I think both of them are going to have a bigger impact on the offense this year, more than Galladay.
And the biggest impact, I think, for the Giants right now is, and look, talking with both Giants and Jet fans a lot, both teams hate to be compared to each other. I think that that's obvious, but it is kind of funny that it feels like this training camp is kind of going similar to what happened to the Jets last year, where you had a very critical year in terms of development, but it felt like the injury bug was just decimating the Jets roster even before opening day. And the Giants did catch a huge break with the Kayvon injury. Look, it still sucks, but let's be honest. I think Kayvon is the player Giants fans are most excited to see of anyone this year, even over Daniel Jones and Saquon. And the good news is he's only out 3 or 4 weeks, but you look already. I mean, we already have Darian Beavers on the IR, who was someone you were hoping could develop this year. Ricky Seals-Jones, who he's proven he can play tight end in this league, and especially at a position where the Giants don't have a lot of depth. And when you look at this team, they didn't have a lot of depth coming into the season. They've already lost Matt Pert for the first 4 games. Center Nick Gates is going to be on the PUP list to start the year. And look, the preseason, it's a huge concern with these injuries. But as a Giant fan, you feel good that Kayvon's not out long term. But it's already feel like it's a bit of a gut punch already, where it feels like a team that really needed everything to go right into the season to get it going has already taken a big gut punch with all these injuries.
Yeah. To start off with the Thibodeau injury, I rewatched that a couple times, and to be honest, right before he rolls up on his leg, Kayvon kind of turned a little bit, and I feel like if he didn't turn to his left a little bit at the waist, he would have went right into the side of the knee. Because he turned, Moss rolled up on like his calf instead of rolling into the side of his knee. So got lucky on that one. If he was done for the year, it'd be a whole different story right now. But I mean, with the other injuries that you named, getting Nick Gates back is going to be huge. He's a real locker room guy for the Giants. Just adding him to the offensive line rotation, I feel like is going to be big, along with Matt Pert as well, like you mentioned. tight end, not having Seals Jones there, that kind of hurts a little bit because tight end is kind of thin, like you mentioned. But overall, you gotta think of the positives. Going into the year, I know Beavers, like his injury was really a gut punch, like you said, and not having him is going to be tough. But I mean, hopefully the recovery goes well and we have him for training camp at the start of next year. But I think overall, dodging the bullet with the Kayvon injury is the biggest one out of all of those.
Absolutely. And let's be honest, I do think that would put a big crank of the season already because, like I said, like I feel like a lot of Giant fans have already kind of moved off on Daniel Jones. I even think there's a portion of the fan base that has moved maybe on from Saquon or has just like they don't have any expectation for Saquon. But I do think that there's a lot of hype up around Kayvon. I think a lot of Giant fans were expecting Kayvon to be there. And it's also like a friendly rivalry. Like we've seen this before with the Saquon and Sam Darnold pick. I mean, that's will always be talked about nauseum. And now it comes down to, well, the Jets took Sauce Gardner at 4 and the Giants took Kayvon at 5. And just seeing where those two players end up is will always be, especially in the New York market, a huge talking point. But for those of you that don't know, Craig's really good with picks, and you got to follow him for all the best picks this year. So we're going to mix it up with a little bit of a game today. And the pick master is going to give us his thoughts. So I've come up with a list of Giant-related questions. And you guys, if you have questions in the chat, please put them there and let us know what you think. If you have any ideas for questions you'd like to ask or any questions in general about the Giants, please let us know. And, of course, give him a follow at Wicks Picks. You can see it on his channel right now. But let's get to the question. So this will basically be a format. I'll give you 2 Giant players, and you have to tell me who are you picking to get the most of, okay? So Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
All right, so let's go right for the jugular. First, we're going to go quarterback. Who will have more starts this year, Tyrod or Daniel Jones?
Daniel Jones.
That was fast.
Oh, yeah.
And is your reasoning now? The only reason I might slightly disagree with you is just Daniel Jones's track record of health. Like that is what concerns me. The neck has also been a concern for me long term. I mean, we were at one point last year even concerned about his long term durability. I guess to follow up on that, if let's say Tyrod Taylor has to start 4 games, is that pretty much a disaster for Daniel Jones? Is that similar? Because you look, Jones has played 12 games as a rookie, 14 games, and then last year only in 11. So he hasn't even gone past to 15 games in a season so far.
Yeah, I think so. If Tyrod is starting and Jones is healthy, that's definitely an L for the year, and you will not see Jones play in a Giants uniform next year. If Jones gets hurt, minor injury, we'll say hamstring, I don't see that as a problem. Quarterbacks get banged up, especially if it's like a design run play for Daniel Jones or a QB sneak up middle, something like that. I see that as, hey, he got hurt, he's human, Tom Brady is like the only quarterback, ever with the health he has, knock on wood, but minus the knee injury that
he might not this year with the offensive line he's going to have this year. So we'll have to see. So the next question, we're going to be still focused on the offense. I mean, spoiler alert, I think the biggest question about the Giants is offense. It's an offensive league, and look, offense sells. I mean, they don't have defensive fantasy football, so most of these questions are going to be offensive guys. So
yeah.
Let's mix it up with touchdowns. Who will be a bigger game player and a scorer this year for the New York Giants? Will it be Saquon or Kadarius Toney?
Ooh. Oh, man. I think it's going to be a tight one, but I could see Barkley having more than Toney. Just because with running back, they usually rotate between 2, sometimes 3, where wide receivers, you got a lot more mouths to feed out there for the wideouts. But I see Barkley being more of a go-to weapon for Jones, especially in the red zone. He's going to have a lot more options, setting up in formation outside of the backfield. From what I've been hearing, they're going to use him more as a receiver as well. And we all know who's better in open field. I think I'd take Barkley probably over Tony in open field just because of his power. You know, he can truck right over guys, he can hurdle guys, he can juke guys. Tony's more of a finesse player, where I see Barkley more of like an all-around, well-rounded player in the open field when it comes to getting around guys. So I got to go with Barkley on this one.
Yeah, and plus you also wonder too with the fantasy option, like will he get a couple goal line carries? And I do think we've seen the Giants use Daniel Jones in the red zone a lot with that running ability. I think they temper that down to try to keep him healthy this season. So that was a really good answer. So let me get the next one up for you. I don't know why it just deleted for some reason. God love the tech. So I think I know who's not going to be the answer to this question, but just to entertain it, who will have the most wide receiver yards this year between the three options? It's going to be obviously Kenny Galladay. It's going to be Kadarius Toney and Wan'Dale Robinson. Which receiver do you think for the Giants is going to lead the team in yards this year?
So going off of last season, just with the injuries Tony had, we'll say all wideouts stay healthy all year. I'm actually going to go with Tony on this one. I think Tony is going to lead the wideout receiving core with the most yards this year. And that just has to go with like yards after carry. He's really electric with yards after carry. And who knows, Robinson could lead the wideout core with yards this year too. But we really don't have like as much tape on him. We don't know how he's going to be. If they're even going to target him as much as Galladay or Tony. So just by going off of last season and from what we know so far this year, I think Tony is going to lead.
So you're probably going to hate me for this question because I know hindsight's 2020, but I know Wan'Dale Robinson's having a really good camp.
Yeah.
There's another receiver on another team that's also having a very good camp. So if you had to redo it, did you still take Wan'Dale Robinson, or did the Giants miss out on George Pickens? I'm not just gonna give you fastballs and batting practice. I gotta throw a curve. I gotta throw some curveballs in here. I gotta keep you on your toes. I gotta throw you some changeups.
I mean, Pickens does look good. I gotta stick with Robinson, just because he's our guy, but I mean, Pickens is really nice. We should maybe revisit this one halfway through the year, and maybe I could give you a little bit better of an answer, but I got to go with Robinson. I've really enjoyed seeing what he's brought to the table since camp and preseason games and stuff like that. But I'm just excited to see what Robinson brings to this team, but like I said, we should revisit this halfway through the year, and then I could maybe be like, oh man, this is like the Patriots drafted N'Keal Harry over DK Metcalf,
Right. Well, I think they drafted Thornton over Pickens too. Like I was looking back at the second round. I mean, Pickens went 51 or 52, and Thornton's out for 8 weeks. I mean, there's a couple of teams you're wondering, did they miss out on an opportunity? Green Bay, some of the better teams, like even Kansas City to an extent, but let's shift to the defense. I mean, one of the exciting things about this Giant team is you feel like they're going to have a good pass rush. And let's be honest, when the Giants are great, they have a great pass rush. It's about getting to the quarterback. Now, they have arguably one of the most exciting rookies of this entire season, but they also had a pretty good rookie last year that I don't think got a lot of pub. So my question to you is, who gets the most sacks this year for the Giant? Will it be Ojulari or Kayvon? Now, I was hesitant to bring this up, but with the chance Kayvon, it seems like the most he's going to miss is one game. So I do think it's fair. If he was going to miss 3 or 4 games, I don't think this would be a fair comparison. But who do you think is going to be leading the sacks between these two? Or is there a dark horse? Could Leonard Williams, slide into that DM conversation that we're not talking about right now?
Yeah, I don't see Leonard Williams sliding in there. I think it's going to be between these two big dogs. And to be honest with you, It's kind of tough to say right now because how's Kayvon going to do in double cover when he gets double teamed? Is Aziz going to be able to read that and pick up on that and react to it, and be like, okay, my boy's getting double teamed. Here's my chance to get to the QB. So I could see a lot of double teams coming to Kayvon. I'm actually going to go Aziz on this one just because I think a lot of teams are going to be solely focused on Kayvon because he's that guy. He's like a JJ Watt on the line. When you're game planning for the week, I feel like teams are going to be thinking more about Kayvon than they are Aziz out there. So I'm going to go with Ojulari.
And look, Ojulari last year, like surprising. Like when I was looking into this, I was actually really surprised of how many sacks he had. I was like, oh, he probably had like 6. He ended up with 8 last year. And I was just really surprised. And it is curious to see how they're going to use him in this new scheme. I'm really fascinated to see how they're going to utilize him. And also Kayvon, too, because Kayvon, we all know, could rush the passer. But is he going to be in there on a lot of running downs? But either way, he's going to be unleashed on the quarterback. So the good news for the Giants is David Gettleman's no longer in the building. I think that's that was like with the Jets, insert Mike McCagnon, John Idzik, all that in there. So my question to you is based off his draft class. Look, I understand a lot of people don't like his draft classes, but we see, Jalari have a good first season. We saw Tony have flashes. Who do you think takes that big jump this year? Because a lot of times, and a lot of people, we talk about the Giants and the rookie class, and yes, it's an exciting rookie class, but if you want to expedite this rebuild, you need a jump from your younger players. So who do you think of those two will take that big jump this season?
This is a tough one. I think I'm going to have to go Ojulari, and the reason being is Wink Martindale. If you look to see what he did with the Ravens last year, they blitzed a lot, and I think that's playing to Ojulari's strength. He's a pass rusher, and I think just by the defensive scheme that Wink is going to be running for the Giants defense, it's going to favor Ojulari, where with Tony, we really don't know yet until week 1 what the offense is really going to look like out there. And I feel like once we see week 1, week 2, then we might have a better understanding. Hey, how's Tony going to be used in this offense? How's Barkley going to be used? How's Galladay? And the list goes on and on. But when it comes to Azeez Ojulari and Kayvon, I feel like it's pretty cut and dry. Like Wink Martindale, he blitzed the most, I think, out of every team last year. So it kind of makes you think, okay, I think we're going to blitz more this year. So I'd have to go with Azeez Ojulari. He's going to have more chance to make that jump.
And also with him, too, I think you're going to see Tony used a lot of different ways. But Ojulari, I think him and Kayvon will get a lot of use. And you do wonder, too, because Ojulari was a later round pick, and despite having success already in the NFL, if he's going to get overlooked. Because there's a target on your back when you're a top 10 pick, and especially when you're one of the vaunted pass rushers. And it almost feels like they want to welcome you to the NFL and like, oh, you think you're that good? Well, we're gonna show you that maybe you're a little bit over your skis right now. So this is nothing to do with the Giants on the field, but off the field. And I think it's appropriate giving the attire today. But the Giants are bringing back their throwbacks from the early 90s when they won 2 Super Bowls. So my question is to throwback or not to throwback. Look, I've been on this show saying, look, I like the Giants uniforms currently, and I know there isn't a huge change between the home ones, but I hate the current road uniforms they have. I really think they should go to those white like pants on the road, and with the like I love the throwbacks because they're predominantly blue with a little red. It seems like now a lot of the jerseys, it's like the road jersey especially is a lot of red, and I'm like, they're not big red, they're not Cornell, they're big blue, the Giants. So would you prefer to have the throwbacks full time, or do you like just how it is, just like bring them out on 2 or 3 occasions a season?
I think bring them out full time. It's time for a change. Time to turn the page here. It's time to throw it back to the old blue jerseys at home with the red trim. And I think on the road they should maybe not go to like the ones that they wear for the color rush, but maybe if they brought back the ones that like Tiki Barber used to wear, the white with the blue numbers and the red trim on the numbers. I think they should maybe bring those back on the road. I definitely like the word mark on the helmet. I wish they would go with that instead of the NY, but
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. Money talks when it comes to sales. So anything they could do to, all about that with the Jets. They change their jerseys like almost every year, it seems like.
No, they just changed them recently. They had those jerseys for like 20 years. Although I will say I was disappointed. I did a whole review on the channel about the black helmet. And look, I think I know some pure Jet fans hate the black jerseys. I like the black jerseys. Personally, wish they'd throw in some green socks or a little bit more green in the black jerseys. And I know they're wearing 3 times a year, but personally, I was kind of hoping for a throwback. I really, especially with Joe Klecko up for the Hall of Fame, thought bringing back the 1980 Sack Exchange jerseys. And I get probably why they didn't do it is because they're very similar to the jerseys that they have now. But still, I think it would have been cool to see those throwbacks out on the field again. But like I agree, like I just think like the old Giant uniforms are so classic and they just look so clean. Like it's one of the things too, like I think a lot of fans were disappointed this year with the throwback program because it was exciting because you had the new shell rule. Oh, okay, we can bring throwbacks back. And it felt like most of the teams just were like, okay, we're going to do a black helmet. And look, I don't mind black helmets and black jerseys, but I was thinking, okay, Tampa's bringing back Pat the Patriot. Like I was excited because I'm like, oh, there's going to be so many options for throwbacks this year. And it feels like barely any teams are doing the throwback program, which I think is a huge missed opportunity. It's like Eagles, Kelly Green, I think could have been a good throwback. The Bills, I don't get why they don't go back to the Jim Kelly throwbacks. Look, I know they've done the OJ, I call them the OJ ones, the late 60s ones. I mean, it's hard. Like I'm trying to explain the jerseys. I'm like the OJ throwbacks, but I think it's been long enough too where I'd like to see like the red helmet Bills jersey come back. I know people lost their minds when Allen wore a red helmet to practice one day, and he's like, "Nah, I'm just wearing the helmet." So, look, I think the NFL missed a huge opportunity with these throwback jerseys this year. I mean, it's just a bummer. I'm trying to remember too. I think the Bucks announced the creamsicles, but they're not wearing them this year. It's next year, so you don't get to see Tommy in a creamsicle jersey. But at least the Cowboys are bringing back their Thanksgiving jerseys, so I guess that's something. I mean, at least Washington isn't doing the throwback program because that becomes slightly problematic.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like I don't think you're going to see Throwback Day in Cleveland for baseball anytime.
No.
And unfortunately, like I'd love them to do a Major League theme night or something. So, a Major League themed game where Bob Uecker is doesn't have any broadcast restrictions on Apple TV. That's what Apple TV should do: is get Bob Uecker to call it like he would in the Major League movie without any restraints and just let him go wild. I think
that'd be amazing.
I would pay for that, and I actually will watch Apple TV for that. But I just find it fascinating that this is such an interesting Giant year, and it almost feels like some Giant fans just want to hit the fast forward button to the draft next year, which I think is unfortunate. But I'm curious to see how this team does early because they do have a pretty soft schedule in the middle. If this team could somehow find a way to even like 1-3 to start the season, I think they'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the one thing you have to admit, though, is their division is not good. I think that's the one saving grace for the Giants, and why I think you have hope is because this division is so bad.
Definitely, and just to piggyback off of that, I think Zeke is kind of on the downslope for Dallas. Tony Pollard, I feel like, is the better back for them this year. So I just feel like Zeke's better days are behind him, and with that leaf kind of turning down in Dallas, and who knows how Philly's going to be. And I mean, Chase Young, he's going to be out now too. I think he's on the pup list now too, so he's going to miss the first 3 to 4 weeks. So a lot of question marks in that division. I mean, it was up for grabs last year too. They really couldn't do much with all the injuries that the Giants had. So who knows? Maybe they could flip that page this year and actually be a contender in the division.
Yeah, maybe you can give picks for when Carson Wentz breaks both ankles again, is playing with broken ankles again, because that always seems to be the case. But like I do, it. I think that has to be almost a frustrating thing for Giant fans too, is because the NFC is so bad right now. I think that's the frustrating part. Is if you feel like Daniel Jones was any better, if this team was a year forward in the process, that they could make the playoffs, but because just this whole NFC is so crazy. Like I just look around the NFC and I play this fun game with people, and it's hard. I do the top 5 game. I say in the AFC, name the top 5 QBs. Like you struggle to get 5 players because there's so many you could put in that list.
Mm-hmm.
But then I say name the top 5 NFC quarterbacks, and it's like, okay, Brady, Stafford, Rodgers. Do you put Dak in the top 5? Do you put Kyler Murray in the top 5 right now? Does kissing Kirk Cousins get somehow in the top 5? I mean, I don't think Jared Goff's in the top 5, even though Dan Campbell. We'll talk about the kneecaps. So I mean, I just don't know. But here's another interesting pick too. Like I don't know. Have you seen Hard Knocks this year?
No, okay. Not yet.
I was going to ask you your opinion because I do have some strong opinions about that. Although I still think Hard Knocks peak with the Rex Ryan and the Jets. I don't think you can get any funnier or crazier than that, because never have you seen a team eat cheeseburgers on the field during training camp and then get yelled at, and then basically the rallying cry for a team is let's go eat a goddamn snack. So which I find interesting, but it is one question I've asked a lot of Giant fans this question. I would love to get your opinion, because I had a very strong opinion. You know, I do a lot of the draft coverage, and I do draft mock drafts and grades. I said I thought the Giants hit an absolute grand slam on night 1. I love what they did day 3. I didn't love day 2. I'm not going to get into the receiver in the second round, but in the third round, this was my biggest problem, is that they had 2 third-round picks, and both times they passed on Malik Willis. And I understand that they want to give Daniel Jones a fair shot, but it almost feels like, to me, do you feel Giant fans and even the organization are regretting not getting a quarterback in this year's draft? Because worst case scenario, if it's a bust, a third-round quarterback is not going to derail this franchise. But the upside is if he's a capable starter, you maybe solve the quarterback position, or at least have a really valuable asset that you can maybe potentially trade. So when you're sitting here now, do you feel the Giants made a mistake not drafting a quarterback on day 2 of the draft? Like not day 1, like obviously that's way too high, but when those guys fell to day 3 of the draft, do you think the Giants missed an opportunity? Were you disappointed that they didn't address the quarterback position?
Was I upset? No. Do I think they should have maybe have taken Willis with one of those picks? Yeah. Because I mean, he looks like a pretty solid quarterback, you know, and oh man, I just think like you have Tyrod Taylor. If anything, going into the season on the depth chart, Malik would have been a third stringer. And on the other hand, though, you have Tyrod Taylor. You signed him to a pretty hefty backup contract. So it could go either way. Me as a fan, I'm kind of happy that they didn't, because I felt like they had more heavier needs than a quarterback, just because you had that security blanket with Tyrod Taylor. You haven't had that security blanket in Colt McCoy, you know, the dude with the long neck. I forgot his last name.
Mike Glennon.
Yeah, Mike Glennon last year.
Come on,
Jake Fromm, like all these bums, you know. At least you have like a solid backup this year. So, I mean, am I upset they didn't take one? No. Do I think they should have maybe rolled the dice and took one? Yeah.
Well, my favorite is that you got to watch the Hard Knocks with the Raiders when Glennon was on the team and Frank Caliendo was impersonating Gruden, and he was like, "Glennon, man, I'll tell you, that's one heck of a neck." And just the whole locker room was dying. So like, I think if you guys haven't seen that clip, go watch it. You will thank me later. But like, that's the thing too is we have to remember football. Yes, it's sports, but I almost feel like people forget how much of an entertainment aspect there is. And this was my other argument for drafting a quarterback is let's say through week 6, Daniel Jones is not the answer. If you were a Giant fan, to me, it feels better that, yeah, the rookie quarterback might not work out, but I do think it would be more intriguing to watch a rookie quarterback finish the season than to sift through and watch either Tyrod Taylor or Daniel Jones play the last 10, 11 games when you know that they're not going to be a long-term part of this future or have a chance to be a long-term part of this future, which is why I kept saying, look, I know this was not a good quarterback class. For everyone that's saying, oh, there's no first round quarterbacks, I get that argument. I even said I didn't think I was on the record saying I thought it was a horrible class. The only quarterback I thought that could potentially be a first rounder was Malik Willis. Again, I don't get the Kenny Pickett fascination. I think it's going to be a lot like Mac Jones, where he comes in and he's further ahead than anyone because he's an older prospect. He's an accurate passer. But then when teams catch on to his strengths and weaknesses, it's going to be struggling. And you've heard about the New England struggles. So, like, do you feel like as a fan, like this fan base will feel burnt out if we get through week 6, Jones is either hurt or throwing interceptions, and there really just isn't another option to watch? Because as a Jet fan, I think we've gone through that a lot too, where we get to the end of October and we're like, it's another lost season. Why do I want to invest November, December into watching this team when it's just it's painful at times to watch? Like,
yeah, no, I totally get you. I think if they did have a rookie quarterback, it would put some butts in the seats later in the season, for sure. It would give a sense of excitement to come out to MetLife and see a game. Where if Jones is hurt, Tyrod's playing, the team has a crap record and everything like that, you're not going to get the amount of people in the seats that you would wish.
and I just think that it will be a fascinating season. And I'm just hoping I'm not talking about the draft in October. Like usually that's when I start with the New York teams. Hopefully we start bucking the trend this year. But this is Craig from Wicks Picks. He's on Twitter. He's also does a podcast for weekly picks throughout the season, especially for fantasy football. So if you want fantasy advice, go check him out on Twitter at the handle Wicks Picks. He's got a lot of them, and especially as we're getting to fantasy football season, you guys need as much help as you can get. And Craig is one of the best resources for that. Highly recommend him. And I mean, let's be honest, he has helped me out in a couple of fantasy football situations. So if you don't know, go with Wicks Picks. Again, Craig, thank you so much for joining us here today. Really appreciate it. And we'll definitely be talking to you later this season as it progresses for the New York Giants. And we got to get some more picks on here. I mean, picks get the picks get the clicks, baby. Picks get the clicks. Thank you so much for joining us here today on Rich Sports Talk.